Hello, welcome back to the Cameron-A-Rama. We are here today to discuss True Lies, his follow-up to Terminator 2, and closest thing that mainstream culture ever got to a pure Tom Arnold vehicle. I am one of the hosts of Framework here, Al Schwartz. With me, as always, is John Bernard and our returning guest, Chris Prentice. Chris,
hey, how you guys doing? Good to be back.
Welcome back to the program.
Yeah, Chris, you're something of a Tom Arnold scholar. I would say something like the closest thing I know to one.
Yeah,
probably.
I would say that's fair.
Was this the height of his career?
Well, this was certainly, I think, the most lauded piece of work he ever did. This was where he finally kind of did something that wasn't hitched to Roseanne. He had a sitcom that was kind of an infamous sitcom on ABC a couple years before this, the Jackie Thomas Show, which was,
of course,
it was actually pretty funny. I kind of liked it. It was sort of in the vein of the Larry Sanders Show, somewhat, as if there could be sort of a network version of Larry Sanders, basically behind the scenes of a sitcom instead of a talk show. But it was actually funny, but it was kind of a whole, that was sort of the apex of Roseanne fighting with ABC, and that was all going on, and Tom Arnold was right there, and that whole thing kind of exploded. That show was, kind of a big story when it first started, and then week by week it got to be less of a big story. And so then he kind of just came out of nowhere in True Lies, and man, he just was like on the scene. Everybody suddenly loved Tom Arnold.
This is the biggest movie in the world for, a stretch there, right?
For Tom Arnold, certainly.
Yeah. I mean, this was like, everybody
was
like,
biggest movie that summer?
No,
I think this came out like between Forrest Gump and Lion King.
Yeah, it was after, for that year, it was after Gump and Lion King. So, but hey, the bronze, nothing wrong with getting the bronze, but there's no problem there. But I just remember there was so much
Arnold and James Cameron in the 90s. I don't think you're angling for bronze. I mean,
no,
Arnold started out as a competitor.
This movie feels like aiming for the bronze, though.
Yeah, it's not quite as ambitious as all the other Cameron joints we've talked about. And it's been a while since I haven't heard anybody talk about True Lies in quite some time. So I think it might have been a minute since people have seen this one. So maybe we should just go through the story of this movie as it unfolds for us. So it's got a full-blown James Bond opening, right?
Yeah. Right down to the wetsuit into the tuxedo.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Arnold comes in a wetsuit, pops up on the grounds of this, fortified compound, and pulls off the wetsuit and has the, immaculate tuxedo underneath, and proceeds to stroll in to the fancy pants cocktail banquet and do suave, debonair James Bond shit, where he's.
Does every great director feel like they have to do a James Bond movie at some point? It feels like it.
That was actually kind of back in the day when I saw this. That was one of my complaints. Was I didn't really want to see Arnold in a James Bond kind of persona. I always thought his persona is more, camouflage, special forces, kind of a human G.I. Joe figure come to life. And I always thought, well, that should have been more of his secret agent life, was more those type of missions and not so much all this James Bond stuff. It doesn't really bother me now, but back when I was younger and I just wanted to see him fire a machine gun the whole movie, I was like, I don't know. I don't really need to see him tangoing here. I'd rather he be in the jungles. But yeah, I mean, I guess every big director has to do this type of a James Bond movie at some point.
I mean, I'm thinking back to the directors we've done so far, and I wouldn't say Tarantino's done one. His spy movie was Inglourious Bastards, which is the more war movie than spy movie, really.
He would love to do a Bond. He has a pitch for it, of course, set in the 60s, Casino Royale style, which, of course, they wouldn't let him do. That's the other thing. Like Albert, the Broccoli family will never let them do these movies, so they have to do versions of them. Nolan has two.
Which they tend to be better off for that. I think Indiana Jones is certainly better for not being an actual James Bond movie, and I'm sure Tarantino's version would be better for being a full-blown Tarantino joint than part of a larger franchise.
And I think Cameron just probably doesn't need to do one. That's what I take away from this. Or maybe it's just Arnold doesn't need to do one. He's, I mean, I remember enjoying him quite a bit in this movie when I was a teenager. I think he's very, very out of place in this role.
What was happening was, he had all these kind of huge hits in a row. He had Twins and Total Recall, Kindergarten Cop, T2. So it was like he's becoming more of a comedic star. He has these two big comedy hits, and he's still the biggest action star in the world. So I think he's kind of with his people trying to, how can we meld these together and sort of, how can I build on all this? And then the first attempt was Last Action Hero, and that was, a complete disaster, a complete flop. And so then I think he went back to the drawing board, was able to convince Cameron to come on board, and then we get True Lies. That's kind of his next attempt to meld those two areas where he was having all these hits.
It really feels like that. It feels like, let's get some of that Ivan Reitman energy in my James Cameron movie. Is what is attempted here. And I, you know what? It's actually pretty well, like, this is a pretty good movie, honestly. Like, I'm going to say things about this that are dismissive throughout this podcast, but in the end of the day, I don't think James Cameron can make a real shitty movie anymore. And this is pretty fun for being on the lower tier of his filmography, I think. And those things that don't fit, Arnold Schwarzenegger doing suave, debonair James Bond stuff, for example, is kind of fun anyway. Like, it's kind of enjoying. I'm kind of enjoying watching him try this thing.
Yes.
Yeah. It's cute.
Well, yeah. There's several things that don't fit here. Right from the top of this movie. And it's Arnold doing suave, debonair, James Bond shit. In this opening sequence, there's a part where, he's investigating some Middle Eastern terrorist ring, right? So, and a security guard finds him snooping around basically as he's coming out of a room in his tuxedo. And his cover is to sort of snap it, or no, he's coming through out of the kitchen.
Oh yes, this scene, yes.
No, sorry, I'm confusing two different moments there. One where the guy tries to confront him, and he like starts barking orders at him, and the subtitles say "perfect Arabic," and which is kind of a stretch because I don't know what perfect Arabic sounds like, but I know that he's not speaking perfect English. So I a hard time believing it's not
a joke.
Yeah,
none of this is serious. Is the thing.
I know, but my point is, Arnold doesn't really fit in the suave, debonair James Bond mold. He really doesn't fit in the sort of nebbishy milquetoast computer business salesman in the suburbs of his cover story.
Joke of all.
Yeah, he doesn't fit in either of the roles he's playing in this. It's right. Very funny.
Or just being a father of a wife and a small daughter. He doesn't fit that either.
Right. And it also, I think, in the broader sense, this is Cameron trying to do an action comedy, and Cameron's great at action and not great at comedy, and he's not a great fit for this.
He's made some funny movies. I mean, I think all the movies we've talked to up to this point have some very funny moments in them. Most of them, Bill Paxton, and he's certainly funny in this. Oh yeah, there's some comedy in this.
I don't think Terminator or Aliens are very funny movies.
Aliens,
it's not that they don't have any laugh lines, but relative to your average R-rated action movie, they are especially dour and intense. And Terminator 2, yes, tilted a little more in this family-friendly direction. I mean, even there, I guess a few more overtly comedic beats than Terminator 1 for sure. But
yeah, there's still an apocalypse going on. Yes,
convincing Cameron that he needs to, prove his chops by doing a full-blown action comedy hybrid. I just don't think that was something that Cameron needed to. I don't think he did it that successfully here, and therefore, there's so much things that Cameron's so good at that he only makes a movie once every 5 years or so. So, you could spend your whole career just doing those things you're good at, and it would be a great career.
But that wasn't really the case back then. I mean, he was more steady making the film, so you didn't really feel like there was this huge gap. Oh my God, he's wasting his time doing this one. It was just like, okay, well, it's 3 years after T2, he's going to make another movie with Arnold. It wasn't. He was certainly a highly respected director, but he wasn't. I'm not going to say what he described himself as. That would be too cheesy. But he wasn't quite the monarch of the universe yet at this point.
Right. I mean, this is kind of the last movie that's just sort of, maybe it's the last time it's possible for James Cameron to just do a regular summer movie.
Just a movie. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, it is kind of the only one on his resume, if we're leaving off Piranha, that's just sort of a movie that is, I don't want to say could have been done by anybody, but it is sort of anonymous in a sense.
Yeah, of course it could have been done by anybody.
Well, I think it's well done.
This could have been McTiernan. It could have been Richard Donner. It could have been any of those guys.
Arguably should have been Richard Donner.
I mean, it wouldn't have.
Or Shane Black.
They could have done a good version of this too. It's. I mean, this thing is such a weird relic in a way. Like it doesn't. It's such a dumb premise. It's such a, like, the place he works for is like straight out of Archer or something. I mean, the world that this exists is like, it's like The Incredibles or something. Like this is a fundamentally broken premise, I think, for a movie. And so it has to be a comedy, or a sitcom, really.
And yet I would say the things that work best about it are the action.
Definitely.
Oh, for sure.
The action's really good. Yeah.
Yeah. So if we're going back to that opening sequence, after Arnold's snooping around, he steals some data files, does a tango with Tia Carrere. By the way, I just want to date this movie instantly. It was during the Tia Carrere moment.
She was big for a few years there.
Yeah.
You know what? She was great. Yeah. She got done poorly by Hollywood.
I wondered that. I was like, you know what? Why did the Tia Carrere moment only last for like 2 summers? And she was in several of the biggest movies ever, and was not bad. But
just recently in the Joe Coy vehicle, Easter Sunday.
Oh, good for her. Good for her.
Yeah.
I don't think she was a bad actress necessarily, but she wasn't good enough to overcome how extraordinarily good looking she was.
Could have been part of it. I mean, I think she settled for less in many cases. I think she made some bad choices in bad movies, and Relic Hunter took her off the table decisively.
I don't know what that is. Is that a Tomb Raider ripoff?
Yes, that was a Tomb Raider ripoff.
It was like a syndicated series, right? Yeah. But I believe her follow-up to True Lies was Jury Duty.
Oh, you see stuff like that. She was in like High School High with John Lovitz.
That's right.
She made wrong decisions.
Well, she was trying to stick with what broke her out, which was love interest in goofy comedies.
You're right. That's true.
Or is that that's all she got offered?
She could have been a Bond girl or a Bond villain, or any of those.
She essentially is here. I mean,
she's probably the person best suited to this screenplay. Well, I don't know. Jamie Lee Curtis kind of does miracle work in this, actually.
Yeah,
but
she does, and I mean, Paxson deserves a Sixth Man of the Century award for his work in this film. But this is her doing a Bond girl, doing the bad Bond girl, and she fits that. I mean, that's what she was so extraordinarily good looking that I think you need, if you're not like a Meryl Streep level talent to overcome that, then the only way. She's almost like it's an Arnold Schwarzenegger issue. Like, you have to put her in cartoonish worlds for her to make sense. Or the character has to be built around how cartoonishly beautiful she is.
I mean, you would almost think that, well, of course she was a star in the 90s then, because that's what movies were. And like this, this is representative of 90s action movies in so many ways. There's a lot of movies that have this sense of humor. Yeah.
Ultimate 90s action right here.
Yeah. Before Bourne came along and changed things up. This is
screwed it up.
Right. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to go back to this time frame exactly. Like,
I mean, you forget all the Roland Emmerich films that were so successful at this point. We were making like Dante's Peak, things like that were coming out. That's what a lot of these were. I want to talk about this actually in the near future with both of you guys, the 90s action film, and what I think that is an episode I want to put a pin in and come back to.
All right. I think we got an opening on our schedule sometime next March.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm available.
So anyway,
that one I think I want to talk about. So yes, we can
to get us moving here. We're only 5 minutes into this movie still. We now have to escape from this cocktail party. It's another like total James Bond ripoff sequence where he's being chased by white snowsuited goons on skis firing machine guns at him.
Yeah.
And the great bit with the two dogs.
Oh,
I love that. That is fantastic.
Two Dobermans leaping at him, and he bonks their heads together like the Three Stooges, and then has some, one-liner to the dog's
So, he's
carcasses
sorry.
at his feet.
He apologizes, right?
Wasn't
He
it? No,
doesn't love
He says
apologizing
stay
in this
stay,
or
movie.
something.
Yeah, stay.
Oh,
He does do a lot of apologizing in this movie, which is why I think that
it's cute.
the screenplay probably would have been better off with casting someone more against type who fits the dormouse husband persona better,
Yeah,
and
that's the
surprises you with these suave debonair shit.
I think you needed somebody who could kind of be the sitcom dad.
Right.
Actually, I mean, obviously this is an Arnold vehicle written for Arnold. We're going to play to Arnold, and he will be focused in the end, and we will just leave Jamie Lee Curtis off for the last 20 minutes of the movie, even though that makes no sense to do because it is an Arnold Schwarzenegger thing. But yes, I think this material would be better served by. I was trying to figure out like who the perfect '90s guy to do this would be.
Yeah, and I was trying to think like, is Tom Hanks not right? But I think you and I are saying the same thing here, which is it probably should have been Craig T. Nelson.
Oh, hell yeah.
Kinda.
Oh God, yes.
I don't know about literally Craig T. Nelson. But,
no, but in that vein, actually.
Spiritually, Craig T. Nelson, yes.
Right. A sitcom dad, like you said. I think that was
Ted Danson.
The gist of it. Ted Danson could have done this, yeah.
I think so.
Was he a dad type in the 90s, though? He was still kind of a, like I'm an aging Lothario.
But he had the 3 man and a baby, and, he was kind of softening up.
Maybe this is more of a
Gutenberg. Now we're talking.
Selleck kind of makes sense. I'm not a Selleck fan, but
what? Why not?
He's not that good. He's not. I like the mustache.
Okay, but
he's not that good. But he's never messed up anything for me.
No, but let me just ask you this: have you ever seen An Innocent Man?
No, I haven't seen An Innocent.
Watch An Innocent Man. Just watch An Innocent Man. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay. Yeah. You know what? I will watch An Innocent Man.
Oh,
I don't even know what it is. I'll check it out.
Don't even worry about it.
And I will watch Jury Duty.
Oh, wow.
All right. So we're escaping the party, and Arnold's running off to the van where Tom Arnold and their other sidekick are waiting for him. Tom Arnold is the comic relief sidekick here. And that's his comedy bits in this movie actually work best for me of most of all the comedy.
He's sort of undeniably effective in this movie. And
he's on, like he's going big the whole time. It feels like it should be really grating.
It's stunning that this is not an obnoxious performance.
I know
he coasts on 20 years because of this performance.
Supposedly the word was that he auditioned, blew Cameron away, and Cameron said, "Hey, this is the guy. This is who we want." And Fox said, "No, we don't want Tom Arnold. He's kind of, for lack of a better word, toxic." And then Cameron said, "Well, I'll go do this in another studio then." And Fox basically said, "Oh, okay, well, you can go ahead with Tom Arnold then."
He's good in this movie. Other people could have done this. This is a sitcom character too. A lot of people could have played this role just fine. I feel like,
for sure, but he is really good.
He has chemistry with Arnold.
Exactly. Maybe that's the key to it. Because I figure, is there something about Arnold that allows him to go big in that role without being obnoxious? Like, it almost feels like someone needs to be dragging the rest of the movie up to the heightened level of just having Arnold Schwarzenegger on the screen. Because otherwise, it's trying to do this sort of like boring domestic stuff, the sitcom stuff, as a playful contrast. And again, it doesn't really work because it's Arnold standing there, and that Jamie Lee Curtis does wonders in this movie, but it's a lot to ask her to sell her like befuddlement at learning that the just teutonophonic mountain of beef that she's been married to for 15 years is not a mild-mannered computer salesman, but actually something more.
This whole movie, like her sequence of this movie where, she's mostly in the middle, like, I don't know, hour and a half, and is all Jamie Lee Curtis. And it's like her dragging a cart up the mountain, like the making these scenes work. And she just keeps succeeding and keeps pulling it off and keeps the movie afloat. It's amazing work. But yeah, like, I don't know, like it's amazing she has chemistry with Arnold. I believe we talked about Arnold and women, when we've talked about Arnold in the past, and how difficult it is for him to be a believable romantic partner. And I don't know that I quite buy them as a romantic couple in this
No, exactly. You don't have any sense of how they got together.
Right. Exactly. Yes. But they do have good, like, sort of honeymooners kind of chemistry. Like they are good comic scene partners with each other.
You like them together, even if you don't necessarily buy them together.
Yeah.
That's a good distinction to draw there.
Yeah.
You're right. That for as much as this movie on one end has Arnold like not convincing at either the suave spy stuff or the suburban house dad stuff, Jamie Lee is over here also, or not also, but by contrast, nailing both. They can like dress her down to be the dowdy housewife role, and she can kind of sell that for a while it's necessary. And then, of course, you can pull off like the sex bomb transformation to, the more assertive,
but even when she's doing that, stuff. She's incredibly funny doing it. I mean, that dance is sexy. It's also hilarious. I mean, there's a lot of funny stuff in there.
It's pretty remarkable.
But we'll get to the sexy dance in a bit. Yeah. We're still really way back here.
Okay.
So we hear, we're going down to Arnold and I guess Arnold and Arnold. Right. Maybe that's why Cameron wanted them. It was just Arnold Schwarzenegger and Tom Arnold.
Symmetry.
The Arnie buddies. So we go to their office and they work for, I guess it's the CIA or whatever. It's not super clear, I don't think, but it doesn't matter because it's
the Archer agency or whatever. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Right. And so they sort of established to their boss, who is by Charlton Heston in an eye patch.
Yeah.
As Spencer Trilby. As Spencer Trilby.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
One of the greatest credits. Why is that highlighted?
I do not know. I was about to, should I know like Spencer Trilby? Is that like a prior Charlton Heston character or something?
No,
not at all.
What? He does.
This was kind of an interesting period for Heston because he was kind of popping up in a lot of stuff. He's got a really funny cameo in Wayne's World 2. He pops up towards the end of Tombstone, and then he shows up here. This was kind of like the last hurrah of seeing Heston in big movies.
When was Apes? When did he cameo in the Burton Apes? That's
that would be 01.
That's the year 2000, isn't it?
That was 01. Yeah. That was our second biggest disaster that year.
Oh, right. That was before. Okay. Yeah. That's jeez.
One of his, probably not his actual last, but one of his last performances is in a film called The Order, which is a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie. This is a Jean-Claude Van Damme film. It's a film in which at one point Van Damme goes undercover as a Hasidic Jew.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh, is this worth seeing, Chris?
No.
Okay.
I'm just throwing it out there.
Not even for that sequence?
No, I mean, no. You can probably find
Van Damme as a Hasidic Jew, Charlton Heston. That could have been fun.
Yeah, I liked them together, but they probably just had Heston for like a day or two, and that was about it.
Sure. All right.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, they probably had Heston for one day on this movie too, because he's only in 2 scenes. He really adds nothing of substance to the film whatsoever.
Yeah. He was only there a day, but his eyebrows were there for 2 days.
So in this first one, we're just putting together that Tia Carrere works with this terrorist guy, Abu Salam or whatever his
Aziz.
name is.
Man, they don't care about this character.
No, they do
not.
No. That's a big problem for me.
This villain is just like everyone just dropped the ball with this bad guy. Like, no question, this is the least effort on anything in this film is given to the bad guy.
It's not even just
it's weird.
Him. It's the whole terrorist group. I mean, they're basically like the villains from a Police Academy movie. I mean, that's pretty much what they are.
Very generic. And I mean, the moments of where they're doing comedy bits amongst the terrorists are just demented. There's just a staggering quality to those. And I guess this is all so pre 9/11. It is so dramatically pre 9/11.
Like one of the only bits I thought kind of worked was the guy filming with the cameras about to lose the power. That was sort of funny.
It's funny. It is. Yeah. It's just like I can't believe they came up with a comedy bit for this.
No, I know.
Right. Well, they came up with like half of a comedy bit anyway. It's
right.
It doesn't build too much. Just the guy calling him an idiot. But these are the biggest placeholder villains you've ever seen. I mean, even if you want to just forget about the political context, yes, it's very pre 9/11, and we can be goofier with Middle Eastern terrorism, I guess. That's fine. But also, like, you're doing James Bond stuff. It's not like a Bond villain is not a key part of that formula that you're going to need to hit nail.
It's like they're leaving things on the table there. Like, you get a fun actor to come in and play the bad guy in this movie. I think that helps. I think that only, benefits if you have like a Goldfinger type in this, or a straighter version of Dr. Evil. Some version of that is going to be just fine here. It's certainly better than this guy, who I'm shocked to discover he's the actual villain, by the way. Like, for the first half, I think he's just sort of a featured henchman. And then, like, when he shows up at the end, like, oh no, he's the bad guy. Oh, okay,
right. So, all right, we start tracking that guy with Arnold, and we get into a fist fight / gunfight in a men's bathroom inside a public mall that turns into a foot chase / motorcycle chase / horse chasing motorcycle sequence that goes all around town and up. They ride the motorcycle and horse through the lobby of a fancy hotel and through an indoor mall and into elevators that take them up to the roof of a building. And we get, some of the fun stunt work here of the bad guy launching himself on a motorcycle off the roof of the building to fall onto the rooftop pool of a shorter building next door. And then Arnold trying to follow him on a horse, and the horse just not having it and pitching him over the front of the horse's neck and over the side of the building. And
that's all good.
Another scene of Arnold sort of dressing down an animal.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's good practical stunts and effects. I'm really taken by, like, the particular run that we're on here between The Abyss, Terminator 2, and True Lies, of all the really strong physical stunt work in Cameron movies. You don't see that much at all anymore, and it's fun to watch all of it.
Yeah, it's because it's practical. You're not doing CGI horses or anything. It is kind of exciting in that vein. It is the classic battle between
horse
machine and horse that adaptation taught us about. But
the real John Henry story, yes,
it does. But the reason why I think it struggles to land that point as elegantly as maybe Donald Kaufman might have done in his treatment is that the representative of the horse in nature is Arnold, and he, as a human being, feels like a machine. Obviously we go back to the Terminator or whatever. And there's everything is that part of the reason why the bad guys in this don't work that great is they never find a way to make the bad guys not feel like the scrappy underdogs up against Arnold.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
I'm impressed by this guy finding like ways to drive his motorcycle around inside. And I'm kind of like on his side more than I probably should be.
Well, this is a film where the result of any action scene is so much a foregone conclusion. Like there is no tension to this film when it comes to the action beats. I mean, I would say that, not that there's a lot of tension to the romantic plot line, but there's more. There's more question of what's going on with Jamie Lee Curtis and Bill Paxton than there is, like, will Arnold be able to defeat these terrorists? I mean, it is such an afterthought, I mean, the stunts and the practical effects are all really, really cool and well thought out, but in service of something that it is impossible to care about or take seriously.
Well, the worst to me,
you're right. There's more uncertainty in the romantic stuff because it's just so weird that you just don't really know what's going on. So it's hard to predict what the next beat of that is ever going to be.
When you're doing Arnold beats the terrorists, an action comedy, I always think it's best when the villains don't know it's a comedy, when they're just basically playing it straight. Like if you watch 48 Hours and you see James Remar and Sonny Landham, they have no idea this is an action comedy. They're just these brutal, convicts. If you watch Midnight Run, Dennis Farina, he doesn't really seem to realize it's a comedy. He's just this kind of ruthless mobster. That's where this
or the Beverly Hills Cop movies or Lethal Weapon movies. That's
there too.
That's true of Kindergarten Cop.
Even that, there's another one.
Kindergarten
It's
Cop.
the same thing. Yeah. Yes, but here,
Chris thinks he's in a prestige anti-hero drama.
Yeah, these guys, these terrorists, they know they're in a comedy, and it really kind of, that's one of the big issues I have. Even though overall I enjoy it, it really takes away from the impact that the movie should have.
It's playing against Cameron's strength so much because he is so good at creating tension.
Yes,
and earnest
intensity.
He's
and
also
sequences.
like earnest kind of stakes for all his movies. Everything is he takes all that seriously, except in this movie.
I don't think he's very well suited to camp.
No,
which is what this movie has to be. I mean,
yeah. I mean, it's a situation comedy. It really is. I mean, this has I Love Lucy elements in it,
right?
And
so we're getting to those too, because as after that big chase scene, they lose the bad guy. Arnold also missed his daughter's birthday dinner at home.
Amazing. I just to see one of these in the wild, like you care more about your accounting job than you do this family. Sometimes beautiful.
Yeah, you've got a teenage daughter sitting over a candle full of, or a cake full of lit candles, while her mom's on the phone hearing about how dad's not coming home. It's you're right.
Well, I like how they just have Jamie Lee Curtis basically after that phone call. She kind of looks at the daughter and says, see, like kind of telling us that this is what they must talk about all day long, is how dad's never around and he's just going to keep letting us down over and over again. So at least it's kind of some decent writing that they're able to do that in just a few seconds without really bang us over the head.
Yeah, they sit around and talk about how dad's such a nerd. He's married to his computer job.
Oh boy!
They really don't ever mention how he's. Does it seem like maybe he was a German bodybuilder to you?
Man, all dad does is work his computer job and also 2 hours of exercise every day.
Right.
How come I never met Grandpa? Right. Do we know anything about Grandpa? What was he up to around the 40s?
Oh, there was an amazing Operation Paperclip angle they could have done for a sequel here. But all right, so now we finally get into the Jamie Lee Curtis of it all.
That's true of most Arnold movies, actually. Like that could be a paperclip background to Kindergarten Cop or Twins. Any of that. Well, Twins is almost Boys from Brazil, if I recall.
Kinda.
Twins might have. You could tell me Twins actually did have that in its opening, and I was like, I haven't seen it in so long. You could be right.
Well, it's all about eugenics, basically. The whole movie.
Yeah. What was the
really
scientist?
All experiments and trying to create the perfect, Aryan soldiers, and it just goes awry.
That's weird. Okay.
All right. So now we're into the Jamie Lee Curtis of it all now, where she's a legal secretary, and Arnold uncovers accidentally that she is maybe having an affair, and so he starts using all of his government spy agency network to follow her around and bug her, and sees. This is where we meet Bill Paxton as the guy that she's sort of seeing. Who is a used car salesman pretending to be a spy in order to romance her, in what I can assure you guys is a very clever inversion of Arnold, who actually is a spy who is pretending to be a boring guy in order to romance her. But now we get into all this stuff, and we did a whole episode a year or more ago, John, where we talked about comedy villains and the different subcategories of them, and Sleazes is one of them. And I can't remember if we talked about Bill Paxton in True Lies, because my god,
because I think probably because he's too ineffective to be a villain. He's too pathetic.
He's just more
but a punching bag.
He's just
but he's still a first ballot Hall of Famer sleaze.
Oh, he's awesome. He's incredible. I mean, he's just
this is transcendent work for sure.
Just an incredible lack of vanity in this performance, starting with the mustache. Pees himself on screen multiple times.
Yes,
has
twice.
The iconic lines about how she has an ass like a 10-year-old boy.
Amazing.
And then of course how I've got a small dick. It's pathetic.
She sucks
just offered up completely unprompted.
Oh yeah, the suck starter leaf blower.
Oh,
Just a gleeful performance too. Like he is going for it so hard here. The incredible trill and positivity he throws on ass like a 10-year-old boy. This is an artist at work here in this role. He's so good in Cameron movies. This is the only. Well, no, I mean Curtis is right there with him. Actually, that's the thing. There are successful comedy elements of this film. Like I was saying, I kind of like this movie, even as there are many problems. I think that there are many hits too, many things that work and really work. And Bill Paxton's certainly among that list. Holy shit, he's funny.
I think there are possibly two possible reasons why he slipped by us when we were cataloging the great movie sleazes. Is one, this movie, once you're done watching it, you file it under action and not comedy.
Yeah.
And so he kind of slipped by that way. And the other thing is that, by the way, we are now 45, almost 50 minutes into this movie before Bill Paxton is introduced as a concept.
What a weird structure this film
is wild.
A lot of bloat.
And he is pretty much out of here like 20 minutes later. Like leaves. I was shocked to look at the timestamps when I was watching this and be like, wow, he's really only in it for that long. Like I remember him more clearly than most other parts of this movie. Didn't remember the villains. Had forgotten Eliza Dushku was the daughter. I think I'd even forgotten that Tia Carrere was in it until she showed up. Like, oh yeah, and then Jamie Lee Curtis punches her in a limo. That's right. But I remembered that hanging out of the limo afterwards, more than that, everything leading up to that. And yeah, so he's not in that much, but what he is, you're right, transcendent, just full bore performance.
He's the Ellis of the movie. That's kind of,
yeah.
I mean,
he's on the Ellis continuum for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like anytime he's here, it's funny.
I think he's a bigger part of this movie than Ellis is of Die Hard, just because Die Hard has many more other successful elements competing for time.
Die Hard is a lot more lean and wouldn't give time to Ellis like this movie gives time to. What's the character? Simon? Yeah,
Simon. Yes. Or Carlos, as they dub him. All right.
Yeah.
So basically, they set up this sting where he's like putting the moves on Jamie Lee Curtis, and they bust into his trailer that he took her to, and throw a bag over both their heads and take them off to black sites, or take her to a black site to be interrogated. Again, the comedy duo stuff where they're Arnold and Arnold are trading off using the voice modulator to interrogate her about her level of sexual fulfillment with her husband is creepy and invasive, but more amusing than a lot of the other comedy stuff in this movie to me.
It's pretty screwed up, that scene. It's like,
very.
Like, I know a lot of people kind of say, oh, the striptease sexy dance scene is kind of the most, I don't know if you want to say demeaning part for some people.
Retrograde.
Yeah, but I think this is the scene where it's like, I'm not really into Arnold in this scene. I got to be honest. He just comes off like a dick in this one.
He definitely comes off like a dick. It's such a cartoon of a film, though. It has that. It feels like Honeymooners or I Love Lucy. It feels old fashioned and impossible in that way. So I feel that makes it all go over a little better. Maybe. I don't know. I don't care to make excuses for this, though. It's pretty ridiculous and insane and lunatic that this was what they decided they wanted to put on screen. This married with children shit with spies. Oh. It's crazy.
It's deranged.
Yeah.
And honestly, maybe one of the reasons Tom Arnold works well in this movie for me is he's the only one who pushes back at all on it. Like, there's a whole SWAT
this
team.
Is fucked up, guys. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he's also he's kind of the moral center a lot of times. I mean, he's the one that reminds Arnold, hey, you forgot your wedding ring. He's the one who's kind of always kind of keeping Arnold a little bit more centered than he probably would be otherwise. That's kind of, I think, what I like about Tom Arnold in this. But then sometimes he also says ditch the bitch, and then it's like, well, maybe he's not so much that way.
I mean, she is a front for jihadist terrorists that are trying to nuke Miami. So,
I'm not saying I didn't laugh at it.
That. I don't think using foul language to discuss Tira Carrera's character is the feminist shortfalling of this film. I think it's everything in this middle hour with psychologically terrorizing, manipulating your spouse.
Yeah, I mean, what can you say though? Like it should be worse than it is. I guess it's not quite an Ace Ventura. You know, it's a little bit less awful than it could feel. Is the best I can say about it. I don't know. If it were really landing as comedy, I mean, I don't know. It would even be possible to land as comedy if this is the subject that you're doing. You know, if like I said, Jamie Lee Curtis does so much work to make this work, and and her in that interrogation scene. My God, she's good in that. Like, amazing to thread the knot of that scene, and she does.
Yeah, like when she takes the chair and starts bashing in the window. I mean, that's she's pretty convincing there, and I think she gets to drop the one F-bomb in the movie in that scene. And
what's up with that? It's an R-rated movie. What it feels like they were going for PG-13.
I mean, there's some of the violence that's R, and I think that the dance is kind of R because she's grabbing a handful of herself quite a bit. But other than that, I mean, there's really the language isn't out that crazy. I mean, a lot of Paxton's dialogue, the vet gets him wet, but that's still PG-13.
Ass like a 10-year-old boys are.
Yeah,
I mean, it's all the arbitrariness of the MPAA because he's not using swear words to say those things that are so much more disgusting than if he was using F words in there. But God, just the way he describes, he's got her panting like a dog. It's like, oh God.
Honestly, the funniest thing he says, and it's really not that dirty, is when basically Arnold and Tom Arnold kind of have him over the ledge, and he's basically just saying how worthless he is. I think the funniest thing for me that he says is, "I'm navel lint."
The part says, "I gotta lie to women to get laid."
Yeah,
and then he adds, "I don't score that much."
I'm navel lint.
In the trailer when she kicks him off and he's like, "If not for me, do it for your country." I really like that. That was good. A wonderful performance, no question.
So now we are about an hour and 20 minutes into this movie, maybe, and we have finally reached the second act.
Yeah. How many acts? I guess it's a 3-act structure. They just don't really relate to each other.
I mean, it's either 3 or 4. Like, I mean,
well, they have an act of one movie and then a first act of another movie, and then they meld them together for the third act. That's what they do.
Well, no, well, unless there's a fourth act, because the fourth act is forgetting about the marriage stuff and just back to being the Arnold takes down terrorist movie.
Yeah.
I'd say we're up to this point where we get rid of Paxton and get her coerce Jamie Lee Curtis into doing this undercover operation so that Arnold can, I don't know, I guess just have some hotel sex with his wife. Like that's where we finally get to the second act of this movie. I feel like that everything else is set up to that point. Regardless, we're now here where she is being sort of blackmailed, extorted into masquerading as a prostitute who's going to go perform for this mysterious arms broker or whatever that the government is apparently, forcing her to do. And so they give her the instructions to go in and be sexy for this guy who is Arnold sitting in the shadows playing a tape recorder like Kevin McAllister of his buddy with a French accent giving her instructions for how to touch herself and dance and all this stuff. And it's very gross. And also Jamie Lee Curtis pulls it off and is, like you said, really funny when she's doing the weird, like, hand roll dance,
the 70s kind of dance. Yeah, that's hysterical.
Yeah, little disco dance move. And then when she's really fully into the whole like striptease aspect of it, and so is he, and like the movie's like really into it, and then she just kind of loses her grip on the bedpost and flops out of frame, and then pops back up really quickly. I think that's the best laugh of the movie.
Well, I like when she like licks the bedpost and then Arnold drops the tape recorder. the part that's funny to me.
Like, oh, she's sexier than I knew. Yeah, it's great. This scene, like I think I said early on, maybe Piranha, during the Cameron-A-Rama, that I don't consider Cameron to be a particularly horny director. I would like to formally recant that right now. And, no, his movies are quite horny. Probably none.
You forgot how long that sex scene in Terminator is.
Yeah, they're all kind of horny. I guess Aliens isn't
and
that
Titanic,
horny, but the rest of them pretty much are. And this one maybe the most. Like this is a very weirdly horny movie, and it's fetishy. All this weird shit that he's doing here is very like fetish shit. It's strange.
I mean, Avatar might be in the mix depending on what kind of Japanese cartoons you're into.
Oh, that's very fetishy. Those things look like fetish objects. They're
yes.
We'll get to that.
That's a whole other episode.
Yeah.
So finally, he like makes her lay down on the bed and is moving in to like start sexing her up, and she bashes him over the head with the phone on the bedside and tries to flee. And maybe that's part of the reason why this doesn't play as like just utter monstrosity
they've kind of made us, they really do a good job of kind of threading the needle with this character and making Helen Tasker as sympathetic as possible, and it's not a Peg Bundy thing at all. And I don't know if this is good, because in a sense it lets him off the hook and it makes this movie feel a little cleaner than it actually is. That she wants to be faithful and that she loves him, and she just wanted excitement in her life that he wasn't providing. You know, like it kind of goes out of its way to explain itself that doesn't change how fucked up this movie is, though.
No, I'm talking about the simple act of that she bashes him in the head before they do anything means that. I mean, I would say the sex crimes have already started to be committed, but there's not fraudulent penetration, at least. And he is sort of punished for that transgression.
I would say
before we leave this scene, we're able to move on to the next part of the movie, feeling like, okay, there was a little bit of closure on that weird shit.
A little, yeah. Uh-huh.
That it ended on a note of her asserting her power.
He got bonked on the head is his comeuppance. Yeah.
Well, and by her, that she asserted her agency in some fashion there. Like, well, I'm not saying this makes it all great and perfect,
but here's the thing: as fucked up as this movie is, it is still on the continuum of strong female protagonists in Cameron movies.
Oh yes,
very much so. It's just such a different, weird, demented one.
She's the character that really has an arc. I mean, Arnold doesn't really have much of one. It's her, Jamie Lee, pretty much the whole way.
He doesn't really become a better husband. Exactly. I mean, I guess he does. I guess we're meant to believe that they're full partners now at the end. But
now he'll stay in. Now he'll stay in and thumb wrestle his wife and daughter. That's how we know. That's how we know everything's fine.
He doesn't stay in there. He still gets the phone call and leaves.
Well, but I
think we are to believe. Yeah, the arc is that their marriage improves, but not because he changes as a husband or does anything different.
No, she's the one who changes.
Now she's in on it.
Well, he stops lying to her. I guess it's his change.
Yeah, but she's got the bigger arc. You're right. And she's a better character, a more sympathetic character.
Yeah.
That it's just this movie is bookended by sequences that don't involve her whatsoever, or just
odd. Yeah, well, it's in service of Arnold, and
it's at the end of the day, Jamie Lee's great. She's the best performer in the movie, but it's an Arnold movie. It's his face on the poster. It's his name above the title. It's it's going to start and end with Arnold.
Yeah, apparently it should end with both of them though. Like if this wants to be the movie it's trying to be, I think the finale needs her.
I mean, it ends with both of them at another cocktail party doing the tango together this time, but
where somehow Paxton shows up.
Really. As he's a waiter now. I don't know.
Yeah,
did
he's
he
an
lose
undercover
his salesman job somehow.
Yeah,
he's catering. Yeah.
I mean, it's fine. Who cares? We want.
It doesn't matter.
Closure on that character.
It doesn't matter.
Just see him again. Yeah.
Yeah.
But first, we were captured by the villains. Mm-hmm. They are taken.
Yeah. How did the villains know they were in the hotel? How does Crimson Jihad know that this is going on?
I mean, this is a great example of the movie not giving a shit.
I mean, it doesn't matter. It's a movie, but it's like they just show up because it's like, well, time for them to come back, and that's basically it.
Yeah. Yeah, third act. It has to happen. We need.
Well, I think.
Why do they need him at all? Actually,
they had been investigating Arnold's cover identity and tracked his family through that somehow.
Another reason that this is not a workable dual life. Like this is not a.
Yeah. So now we're in the Florida Keys, and the terrorists have revealed to Jamie Lee that her husband is a spy, and as they're holding him hostage, talking about their plan. They have a few loose nukes that they have got their hands on. They're going to blow one up in the Florida Keys to prove that they've got it, and then blow up another one in the American city each week that their demands are not met. All right, great. And in the meantime, I guess they want to interrogate Arnold for something, so they shoot him up full of truth serum and leave him alone with his wife for a few minutes while it takes effect, so that we can have her sort of interrogating him while he's drugged into telling the truth. Then he, of course,
I like that. It's basically kind of it's the response to him interrogating Jamie Lee earlier in the movie. So I mean, it's kind of good that it's like he kind of gets his comeuppance there, and that he's got to kind of bend to her will a little bit in terms of answering these questions. It's not a very long moment, but to me that whole the truth serum bit is worth it just for how he kills the doctor and the henchman by telling them exactly what he's going to do.
Well, that's a memorable part about that. That's the really good moment there. It's a good Arnold moment, is why it's a moment that plays to his strengths, unlike a lot of these moments. And yeah, he's that's funny in the way the film. It seems like that's a moment that bridges the two films in a way that the rest doesn't always get to. Yeah, all the neck snapping as well is funny. This
little stretch of the movie feels like it should be what most of the movie was.
Yes,
but it's weirdly confined to this one stretch here, where now they escape and kill, I don't know, a few dozen of these cartoon henchmen.
Yeah,
and
what do you guys think of the Uzi dropping down the steps and wiping out the room? For like
I counted, seconds. I think it kills 10 guys as it's tumbling down the steps, firing randomly.
It's funny.
I mean, it's a fine gag.
I've seen variations of that in other movies before. I think there's like, I forget which Star Wars. Doesn't Jar Jar do that in one of the Star Wars movies? Basically, I forget which one.
A version of it.
Yeah, and so it's been done, but I think Cameron's just so good at directing action that stuff that might seem kind of corny in other movies, it just looks cool because he's just so good at directing that kind of action. So that's why the gag works for me, just because of him.
Yeah, I mean, I would have said let's leave like 3 of these dead bodies out of this. Like taking out 7 people with this gag is probably plenty, but it was in for a penny, in for a pound, I guess. Who cares? There's some fun stuff there. Arnold, improvising a giant flamethrower and fleeing from a bazooka shot.
That explosion on the bazooka, that is such a great explosion, and him jumping into the water. I love that. You do not get action like that anymore. And I just think it sounds kind of simple. Okay, guy shoots a rocket, you're going to jump in the water. Kind of, we've seen stuff like that a lot. It just looks so cool the way Cameron directs this. It's an awesome sequence. I love that.
The way the stuff he captures in this, like, really kind of puts the movie, it improves the film dramatically, I think, is just how good this movie looks and how well it's shot. And like that, anytime you're being annoyed by some of the weird shit in this, or a version of why this character isn't working, like that stuff, there's always like a scene of Arnold jumping into water, and there's a bloom of fire exploding above him that you're looking at, or these sequences in everything on the bridge. Of course, it just looks great. All the models, all the explosions, all of it is top of the line action.
Yeah, we have a giant fist / knife / machine gun / flamethrower / bazooka fight here, followed by a big car chase, helicopter / car chase / Harrier jet. It's like, that's Cameron stuff. This is where he can't make this stuff look bad.
You get like the Pelican landing on the front of the van and tipping it into the bridge to remind you that you're still watching True Lies.
Yeah. Right. But you get some pretty great stunt work nonetheless. Of they had a real person dangling off of the whatever you call the landing bar for the helicopter.
That is an incredible stunt. That entire sequence is outrageous.
It looks so good.
It's so great. Yeah. It's I mean, it's in the running for the most impressive stunt in the entire Cameron filmography. I have to say, it's as good as anything in Terminator 2. It's wonderful. That whole bit, guy on the helicopter pulling somebody out of the top of a moving vehicle and riding down a bridge. How do you shoot that?
Yeah,
I mean, it looks like they just did it. I know they made models. I know there's fakery and tricks, but it's pre-CGI. We're not really doing that.
It looks so good, and so much of why it looks so good is Jamie Lee Curtis. Just her facial expressions just completely sell the whole scene, and that's really what comes to mind with that sequence. Is, I mean, she is selling it 100%.
The number of things asked of her in this movie to sell these action scenes, after all the work she's already put in and making the weird sitcom mind game fetish stuff work, and then she has to pull off these big action scenes where she's being goofy, like the goofy success in action scenes. That's almost impossible. It's Jar Jar. If this character doesn't work, we're watching Jar Jar Binks stuff right now.
Yeah,
like we are at that one moment, literally, and it doesn't come off that way because she is excellent in this. This is man, this is a good performance.
Yeah.
This is probably like, you should be thinking about this for Oscars performance. Like I can't think of anyone else.
She won I think she did win a Golden Globe for this.
Good.
But then they kind of, but they split it up.
Comedy musical. Right.
Whatever. Yeah. So.
Right. Yeah, we don't get to say good for the Golden Globes that often. So let's, let's hit this one tip.
That's well deserved. Yeah.
Yeah. No, she is awesome.
In contention for the best work of her career, probably, just because of the high level of difficulty. And now, yes, nobody else. I can't think of a single other person who could pull this off against Arnold.
But by the way, talking about, you're right, the Golden Globes split things up between like comedy or musical and drama, and that's what the Oscars should do, man. I mean, like, they have expanded the number of nominees to try and like recognize more different types of films, but I just make distinct categories for drama and comedy, and you can recognize more people.
I think they just got to get their stick out of their ass and nominate things like this performance. Pull out the comedy stuff, give it that stamp, and put it in the 5. And this is tough because they don't make comedies in movie theaters anymore. They just don't exist in that way. So I don't know what you're asking them to do. I'm not really asking them, well, you should consider performances from Black Adam or whatever.
Have you seen Pierce Brosnan in Black Adam?
I haven't, as a matter of fact.
Neither have I, but I hear he's good.
I'm sure he's fine. Yes. He's a professional. Of course he is.
Pierce Brosnan might have been able to pull off the Arnold role in this better. This is pre-Bond, right?
He should have been the main villain. He should have been the main villain in this.
Actually, I think you're right. I think Pierce Brosnan... I mean, yeah, I guess this came out like right before GoldenEye.
This was the year before GoldenEye. Yeah, 1 year before.
Yeah. So yeah, he wouldn't have been in a position to get a role like this, but that's the right guy.
Oh, he was coming off the heights of Mrs. Doubtfire.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
A film this has some,
maybe Harrison Ford.
This feels a little bit like Miss Doubtfire sometimes, by the way. A little bit of overlap in the
it does.
The fucking sexual mind games he's playing with his wife. Yeah,
yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yes, I think that is the overlap. That he's sabotaging her, like, other relationship, in a way where you're like you're not rooting for that relationship, but you're also like, this seems like a weird, fucked up way to go about this.
Yeah, I mean, you could have. It was a drive-by fruiting. You could do this. It would have been a fun Mrs. Doubtfire, Arnold. That would have.
Honestly, yeah.
Having hot flashes, which he literally probably does in Junior.
Yeah, that is kind of his Mrs. Doubtfire.
That is certainly, Junior definitely got greenlit because of Mrs. Doubtfire. So,
yeah.
All right. So anyway, we got finished up with that bridge, but we skipped over the one beat that's super weird during that, where Arnold's calling in the fighter jets to do an airstrike on these trucks that are transporting nuclear bombs, and the pilot says over the radio, like, he tells them to fire their missiles. And he's like, these won't detonate the nuke, right? He's like, negative. Go ahead. And then he looks at Tom Arnold and there's like, I hope that's true.
That's funny.
Like, that is an insane beat to include here.
That's funny.
It's so
great bit of physical comedy from Arnold there.
There are a few movies that are as pre 9/11 as this movie. I feel like,
right.
I think that they were talking so much about a sequel to this for years, and I think 9/11 was what finally was like, absolutely not. You will not get a True Lies sequel.
Yeah.
Sorry
thank you. Tom Arnold was still trying though. He was still trying, even after the towers fell. He was on the phone with Cameron. This changes nothing. This changes nothing.
I'm ready to get out of the van.
Let's go.
We can rewrite that scene and that other scene. It'll be fine.
We just make it cartels. Nobody cares about the cartels. We can just deal with them. That's the villain.
I mean,
right. So we still have a whole other like fourth act of this movie, though.
Right.
Yeah.
Because now after that goes off, the marriage is reconciled. They're revealed to each other. They stopped one of the bombs.
I mean, the movie has basically been resolved at this point.
But now there's another hostage situation where the bad guy has escaped once more and has taken their daughter up to the top of a skyscraper in Miami, where he's threatening to detonate the nuke. So Arnold leaves Jamie Lee Curtis behind, commandeers one of these fighter jets, and flies it off to downtown Miami to assault this. Again, the bad guy is just feeling like the underdogs here. It's like a dozen guys with guns versus Arnold in a fighter jet. It doesn't feel like a very fair fight.
I do think it's kind of cool in that sequence that I guess with Grant Heslov, Mr. George Clooney producing buddy, who's the number 3 good guy, he gets a little bit where he gets to shoot the terrorists in the building. That was kind of cool that they give him.
Yeah, the third banana gets a nice little.
I know, that's good for him.
Cameron knows to do that stuff. There. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But you get a pretty good action sequence there of a Harrier jet just floating around a building, blowing it to smithereens, and then
it's an insane vehicle. It's fun to look at just such an insane vehicle for an act of a film. I mean, I don't even know if this thing exists, to be honest. It could be they made it up for True Lies and I never realized it wasn't real.
I mean, there's some version of it has existed. I assume Cameron insisted on getting like an actual decommissioned Air Force plane for this, just because that seems like what he would do. It made me wish that Cameron had ever done like a full-blown air combat movie, like fighter planes.
I'm sure he'd nail it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, like, Avatar's got room for that, but I feel like it doesn't really.
Well, they're flying on dragons and shit,
So yada yada yada. He saves Eliza Dushku, and I guess she's very happy that her dad is a super spy.
Oh yeah, sure. I mean,
he's happy to be alive, sure.
The kill of the final terrorist is not bad. I mean, it's ridiculous.
It's Wile E. Coyote shit. It's full blown Looney Tunes, but.
Well, that's
for this
that terrorist. The whole movie is basically Wile E. Coyote. So
that's true.
It's a great send off.
He nails the coup de grace line.
He does it better than the other guy that was famous for that line. So I like Arnold's version of it better.
Yeah.
It's a better death than that villain probably deserves. I mean, and it's fully cartoon by that point, which is fine, I guess. Now we're finally done. We got the final, kiss off sequence where they're going into the field together as a husband and wife spy team, and at another fancy party where they're playing the same, classical music. I have a note weird about this. I don't know what to call this music piece. It's very famous. You'd recognize it if you heard it, but
I just know it as the True Lies song.
Kind of.
That's how I.
It appears to be very violin forward, but in the establishing shots, it appears to be this band of people in like penguin suits. It's like a full orchestra, and also somebody's playing electric guitar, and there's an accordion being actively played during it.
They must need it. I don't know.
I found myself trying to isolate the accordion, riff of that tango. But anyway, that's where they run into Bill Paxton one more time and force him to wet his pants just for fun. Just for fun.
Yeah. Why not? Why not?
Why not?
Yeah, and that's True Lies. It's been saying the things that are weird and bad and don't fit and misjudged about this. Again, I do think that he did a pretty good job making this movie. Like, I don't know why it exists. I don't understand. It certainly is an outlier in his filmography in many ways. It feels like the only thing he's made that is not a Cameron movie. He's still pretty good at making movies.
So yeah, it just feels like this is a movie that, was not something Cameron was, aching to make. And, Arnold was looking for something to kind of rebound off of Last Action Hero. And Cameron said, yeah, sure, why not? Let's just do it. You're my buddy. Let's go make a good movie.
It's a remake of a French movie, right?
Yeah. Has anyone seen Le Total?
No.
I thought it was Les Honest Deception.
Is that right?
No,
it's La Total.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
That sounds like the Arrested Development version of it. It might be a better movie in some ways, but I bet it doesn't have Bill Paxton.
Yeah, I doubt it has the good things in this.
I don't think it's got the explosions.
Mm-hmm. And it really does coast on... Look, I've been making fun of Arnold's performance in this. He's still Arnold. He's still doing Arnold stuff. Yeah, and he breaks all those necks in the third act. That's a lot of fun. I'm actually really taken with that sequence where he just, like, you see henchmen get yanked out of frame and then you hear a neck break noise and they do it like 5 times. That's all good stuff.
Yeah.
This is a weird comparison to draw, but bear with me for a second. But John, you and I recently talked about House of the Dragon, and sort of my critique there is somewhat similar to my critique of True Lies, in that I feel like you start from a flawed game plan of making the wrong type of movie with the wrong people here.
Yeah.
Or just the way that show structured its whole season was like, this is just wrong from a 30,000 foot view. But then individually, like, they're executing on the plays as well as you could possibly do.
I think that is what True Lies is like ultimately, it is sort of a fundamentally unworkable idea that everyone kind of rises to the occasion and does a very good job with, and that sort of raises it up to, sort of a B plus, just on pure execution, and that's, I think that does speak well of Cameron and how he runs a ship, kind of thing. I like this more than some of his movies that we haven't talked about yet, but it is kind of hilariously broken. I mean, just fundamentally. But they rise to the occasion with it. And yeah, there are things in this that are kind of superlative, like Bill Paxton, Jamie Lee Curtis, and the action scenes. And, there's enough of those, and individual scenes work. It's, in the end of the day, a good movie.
I would say there are enough pieces here that I feel like the whole should work more for me. Like the ones you mentioned, and even Tom Arnold's comic relief is pretty good, like I said.
Yeah.
But I think I'm developing a new theory of film on the spot here. And my theory is thus: for a goofy action comedy, which this is, the ideal length is somewhere between 1 hour 48 and 1 hour 51 minutes.
Yeah,
this is just 2 hours 20.
Sure. This needs to be tighter.
I mean, he made 2 fantastic long action films between Aliens and T2, but this one, you feel it. Mm-hmm. I mean, you definitely are kind of like, mm-hmm. Wow, how much more do we have to go in this? You would never really say that about Aliens or T2, but it definitely comes up in this movie.
I would restructure it to cut out the Harrier jet building sequence at the end completely. And because
I think you just need to include Jamie Lee in that somehow. You got to contrive something.
Yeah,
somehow. Yeah, add something to the Florida Keys sequence. Maybe that is worked into that somehow. And yes, it involves Jamie Lee. Like, maybe the last thing that happens is that helicopter stunt. It doesn't really get better than that afterwards. And mm-hmm. And that feels like, I don't know. Then you've got a 2-hour movie on your hands. Tighten it up a little bit in the first act too, and and then maybe you have. Well, even then, it's still this weird fucking Married with Children shit in the middle with spies.
Well, I think that the big obvious one, though, is... Well, the Married with Children shit, though, is what I feel like the movie is about. That's the premise of the movie.
Right.
So it's weird that it takes us 45 minutes to get to Paxton and an hour and a half before they're, like, revealed to each other
Yeah,
their,
it's an hour and a
molecular
half.
assumptions.
It's about an hour and a half when the Crimson Jihad returns and busts into the hotel room. I mean, that's 90 minutes into this.
You don't need two complete separate action sequences of Arnold doing solo spy shit before we get to like Jamie Lee's part of this movie and introduce Paxton. You can combine that initial party and the motorcycle horse chase somehow to do all of that and introduce all these concepts and characters in one continuous sequence.
Yeah, because the first part is to introduce Tia Carrere, and the second part is to introduce Aziz, I guess. Right. Is sort of what the narrative functions of those are. You can combine that.
But you can do that. And it can be the opening action sequence of the movie where he's missing his daughter's birthday, to lead us directly into the domestic stuff. That seems obvious to me if you're trying to whittle this down. But this was just not, I guess, a time or a place where Arnold or James Cameron or America was trying to go smaller with anything.
Excess, 90s excess. This is the length of Independence Day or any of those movies that were, The Rock is this long, Armageddon is longer. This is how we made our movies at this time. And as with those, just sort of jacking off to the idea of the world being destroyed, like a big part of those. I want to talk about these films down the line. This is such a 90s action film. It's more of a 90s action film than a James Cameron film, really. It has,
I mean, would you say that James Cameron is more of an 80s action guy, or is he just his own?
He's his own.
He's his own, yeah.
Except with this one, This
well,
is
it's like to me,
slots right in next to The Rock.
This is to Cameron as Broken Arrow is to John Woo. It's like that's kind of how I
savage.
No, I love Broken Arrow,
that's
but
unfair to Broken Arrow.
I love it. It's an awesome movie, but it doesn't really kind of like scream, "Oh yeah, this is a John Woo movie." So that's kind of how I feel about True Lies.
It is the most anonymous of his films, for sure, and which is odd for being such a strange movie.
Yeah, but it's strange in a way that feels, like you said, 90s and not unique to Cameron.
Yeah.
Because his peccadillos, I mean, one, it's almost entirely above water.
Mostly.
So clearly this is not where his heart's at.
Yeah.
Do we want to see a True Lies? Well, certainly don't want to see one now, but
no.
I don't know. I don't think it would have been fruitful for anybody. I mean, it would have been good for Tom Arnold, I'm sure.
Well, I think it would have been good for Arnold because this is kind of like the end of him as a gigantic movie star. I mean, he's still had some big movies. I mean, Eraser was a couple years that did okay business. It wasn't like a flop. It did okay. And, he in some of the, I guess Terminator 3 did okay business because they've made like 3 more since. But I feel like this was kind of the peak. Not as big as T2, but this is still him as a gigantic movie star. And after this, we kind of get to Batman and Robin, and then we go to, we've got Jingle All the Way, and then we get, it kind of just becomes where he's not one of the biggest movie stars in the world.
Yeah, I mean, T2 is the top of the mountain, for sure.
And this is like this
is
a little under it.
There's a plateau there for a few more movies, including this one, I would say.
This is the last massive success. Yes, the last top 3 for the global box office for the year. Like a huge success
behind a couple of juggernauts too.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. I mean, it's like those were 2 phenomenons.
It's right up there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And this is also one even more than T2, where it is succeeding on the back of Arnold and his persona more than
totally
the Terminator movies are. Even as the Terminator movies are, I think, using him to better effect.
Of course they are. I still haven't figured out who the right guy to have played this role in the mid 90s is, but yeah, I don't think it was Arnold. But then again, this movie would just be completely different if it wasn't an Arnold film. It's so devised to be one. I don't know.
Is Michael Keaton disqualified because he was already Batman?
It would have been fun.
Yeah, he'd have been pretty
real fun. Yeah. But it needs to be a guy like that, probably. Yes. Like he could do it. He could do the spy stuff.
It should be a comedian doing action, not an action star doing comedy, I think is what this script is sort of searching for.
Bruce Willis, like moonlighting era Bruce Willis, totally could have done this.
Yeah. I mean, we
But he's
kind
already
of
in
got.
He's a different guy at this point. He's in Pulp Fiction this year, but
We sort of got this on a much smaller scale with Nobody. I mean, that with that movie, that's kind of the same idea. It's just a much smaller
Kinda.
scale.
That's interesting. Yeah. I mean, that's a TV actor, and the entire fun of that movie is how good he is at kicking ass. So
Yeah.
that's if that had been what this movie was, I could see that working. But I don't know. Like, if Michael Keaton is doing the weird mind games with his wife stuff, that's a lot creepier.
I get that's probably true.
Well, he kind of did a movie where he's playing those kind of tricks on his wife in Multiplicity. I mean, he's basically
it's a creepy movie,
screwing around with Andy McDowell the whole movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's the ultimately this role is like a really fucked up role, and it's hard for anyone to play. I mean, it almost benefits.
Yeah, maybe you don't. If you make him more real, it makes
Uh-huh.
everything just worse and grosser.
Yeah, if it's Arnold, which is a cartoon character, a Saturday morning cartoon Arnold in this, really, it feels a little cuter maybe than it would otherwise if it were somebody who made sense in the role. So, maybe this is kind of its perfect form, or as perfect as this form gets. This is the ultimate expression of what True Lies can and should be.
Yeah, I guess there might be a ceiling on this premise. Like, I don't know. I do think, weirdly, as much as the action stuff is probably the best of it, it should have been more of a comedy, as I guess.
Well, it's funny because
it seems strange to say that.
Arnold is doing a new series for Netflix right now, which sounds kind of like this, where he's in a spy organization along with his daughter. And it almost kind of sounds like it's a riff on True Lies. It's called Fubar.
That doesn't sound great. Oh, that doesn't sound great at all.
And I can confirm that Tom Arnold will be in at least one episode.
Okay.
Oh, for real?
Yeah, it's for us.
Is it Eliza Dushku? It could be.
I was going to say, that sounds like it totally could be Eliza Dushku.
Yeah, well, she had some...
probably somebody younger.
Well, but she had some issues on this movie that came to light a few years ago with the stunt coordinator.
Oh, yes.
So I don't know, that probably hampered her desire to do anything like this again. But that was maybe an unfortunate footnote to the
any movie made before the last couple of years, at least, feels like when you dig into it, you always find one of those stinky little oysters.
Yeah.
Did you guys know that there is a new True Lies television show coming to CBS?
Yeah,
very soon.
Yeah, I did hear about that. Yes.
I did not. Who are our stars?
A guy I don't recognize, and the actress is Ginger Gonzaga, who played She-Hulk's best friend on She-Hulk.
Okay.
There's a whole trailer for it.
Oh, there is. I didn't even know I didn't know it had gotten that far.
Hadn't even heard of it until I watched this the other night, and I was like, I wonder what people are saying on YouTube about True Lies. Not much, it turns out, but there is a new show that doesn't have a date yet, but they clearly made at least a handful of episodes of it. And
I think as much as like physical media is such a niche thing now, I almost feel like that's kind of a reason this movie has fallen out of consciousness, is because there's been no Blu-ray, no 4K, none of this stuff ever for True Lies.
So weird.
It's this and the abyss. It's like Cameron has basically said, one of these days I'll get I don't even know what he would need to do, to be honest, but I guess he has to do something about him.
Just put a Blu-ray out, for God's sakes. I mean,
it doesn't need any touch-ups.
No, I know.
I mean, I think part of the problem why this movie has lost, stature is that the sequel never came out. So,
well, that's
people
true
just
too.
moved on to other stuff.
Yeah.
Do we have? Can we throw it together? What's the pitch for the sequel? If it's made, 1999, 5 years later, it's got to put Helen more front and center, right?
I mean, I think it's incredible stuff. I think it's like they're a spy family, and it's probably the daughter gets involved. It's probably
I would think so too. Well, maybe that's the third. I guess maybe it depends how many years have passed.
Maybe she's dating a bad guy and they have to humiliate him.
Oh, there's definitely going to be some of that.
Well, I think you also have to have a subplot where Tom Arnold is now in a new relationship and he's having to hide everything from his new girlfriend. And if
that's fun.
If this is the late 90s, I say it's Janine Garofalo.
Well, I imagine they'd have some good chemistry. Tom Arnold and Janine Garofalo.
Yeah.
There are a couple of things here. I was gonna say, that my pitch I was trying to put together was we got something where Helen has to like take lead and Arnold has to like be that stay at home, and
he has to be in the van, maybe.
He has to be in the van. And I was thinking, like, well, does that mean that Tom Arnold and her have to pretend to be married for some reason?
But I like now we got that's gold right there. We get a big sequence of them pretend to be married. Yes.
They have to tango, and and Arnold has to listen on the radio, and he's getting mad.
Hold up! I've got the perfect gag for this. Okay, you do almost like a Rear Window thing, where Jamie Lee and Tom Arnold are in a hotel room doing whatever, made to look like they're doing something that they're not. But Arnold thinks they're up to no good. He's got the binoculars, crushes the binoculars right in front of his face.
I mean,
they do that gag in this one where one of the binoculars lenses cracks while he's fuming behind them.
That's true.
I mean, I think one thing I definitely do want in a True Lies sequel is a lot of fear of being cucked comedy, a lot of that, a lot of a lot of sexual humiliation for sure.
I think it needs to be about Harry's discomfort with his wife doing honeypot stuff.
Yes, that's great. Yeah. That's perfect. Mm-hmm.
And
then you throw in some cartel guys. Absolutely.
Well,
I like the idea of the Garofalo character too, but I also think like maybe you don't want Tom Arnold just doing the same version of what they're doing this time. So maybe he told, he's been divorced 3 times or whatever they establish here, and that this time he went with radical honesty, and she knows all about it, and maybe like she's pushing him to like be more trigger happy or to take on the lead role. Get your ass out of that van, go shoot these guys up.
I mean,
and she's kind of a crazy one.
Amp up the ridiculous cartoonness of it, I think would be the way to go. I had another thought on this. If you remade this now, if you were to do True Lies 2022, I think this actually is a good one to do a gender swap. I think that'd be interesting.
This is actually, yes, you're right. This is perfect fodder for the gender swap.
Jason Sudeikis in the Jamie Lee Curtis role or something like that.
And he's married to Charlize Theron or whatever.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. I mean, there have been some variations that are of this movie. There was Mr. and Mrs. Smith, which that stunk. And there was the one that like Reese Witherspoon did, This Means War. That was a little bit. I mean, they've kind of tried to do this sort of, the spy comedy still with some action in it anyway, and they've never really been as good as this, which is amazing considering True Lies has a lot of problems in itself, but the ones that have come after it have all been bad.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like we were saying, I think this premise is not very good. I don't think this works in a movie very well, and this one coasts on professionals doing a good job and movie star charisma and having awesome action set pieces and people who know how to be funny on camera and people that enjoy working together clearly, with Cameron and Paxton and a lot of those people returning. It's execution kind of saves this one, and I don't think you got that on Mr. and Mrs. Smith or This Means War or any other or probably not the new television show version of this. It's going to be tough. Maybe that's its proper form to be on some show that no one watches on CBS. I don't know. I'm fine with not any more True Lies in my life, though. As interesting as it is, I'm okay with This Is Left as a relic of the 90s and sort of an off note in the career of Cameron that I still kind of enjoy.
Yeah, well, we got more Cameron to get through here. We got Titanic coming up next. That's huge a big one.
Yeah, mm-hmm.
Real big fella coming up. So that'll be fun. We'll do that soon. In the meantime, everybody, please hit the button on your phone that rates our podcast. Ideally with a lot of stars, but as many as you feel like.
Yeah, and if you're feeling even more gregarious, a review would even something that says I like this show or something like that. It improves our visibility on the podcast apps and media, and then more people listen to it. Is the idea. So I've been led to believe.
And write in who should play Bill Paxton in the 2022 version of this story.
Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
Man, that just reminds me he's gone. You just bummed me out.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Joel McHale. Anyway.
There you go.
Yeah. All right.
Dang it, we already made that one moot. All right, tell us who is the sitcom guy who should have played
Will
this
Arnett.
guy in 1994.
Will Arnett.
A lot of people could do the Paxton role, actually. Yeah. Okay, that's it. Thank you for joining us again, Chris, and we will have you back for a 90s action movie thing probably in the next year. So thank you for that. And
look forward to it. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. True Lies.